Bienvenidos al podcast, The Language Here, Comprehensible Input for Learners.
Hello, everyone.
So this deep dive is going to be a little bit different. We're actually speaking in English today.
That's right. But our topic is all about Spanish. We're looking at some really special, kind of unique Spanish words.
Yeah, the ones that don't have just one single easy word to translate them into English.
Exactly. And our goal today is really to help you, our listener, understand the meaning, but also like the feeling behind these words.
Because they often capture a cultural idea, maybe an experience that's, well, pretty unique.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, just so you know, if you're feeling up for a bigger challenge, we actually have another deep dive already posted. It covers this exact same topic.
But entirely in Spanish.
Right. So you can use this English version to, get the concepts down first.
And then go test your listening skills with the Spanish one. It's a good way to practice.
Okay, one quick heads up, though.
Yeah.
We are going to be saying quite a few Spanish words today.
We are. And look, we're doing our best with the pronunciation.
Yeah, we really are.
But if we stumble a bit, please forgive us.
Absolutely. And honestly, feel free to laugh with us, okay? Not at us.
Definitely. Learning languages involves a few adventures, pronunciation included.
We're actually really excited to explore these words together with you.
Agreed. Should we jump right in?
Let's do it. Okay, so let's unpack this idea of untranslatable words. It's not that you absolutely can't explain them in English.
Right. You usually need a whole phrase or maybe even a little story to get the meaning across.
But what's fascinating is what that tells us,
Exactly. I mean, the fact that a language has a single word for something, it suggests that thing, that experience, is like a common, recognized part of life.
Or maybe even really valued in that culture.
Precisely. Language isn't just, labels for things. It's kind of a mirror.
A mirror of how people live and what's important to them. That makes so much sense.
Okay, so where should we start?
Let's kick things off with one that often comes up first when people talk about this. The word is Sobremesa.
Okay, say that slowly with us. Sobremesa.
Sobremesa. So I've heard this one. It means like hanging out after dinner, right? Is that basically it?
Well, that's part of it, yeah. But it's more specific than that, and it carries more cultural weight, I think.
Okay.
Sobremesa is the time spent at the table, relaxing, talking, after the meal itself is actually finished.
Ah, okay. So you're not just getting up and moving to the sofa.
No, exactly. You're lingering right there where you ate. The focus is on the conversation, the connection.
So it's really about the lingering.
Mm-hmm.
And staying in that same spot.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think English doesn't have one single word for that?
That's a good question. I mean, we might say after dinner conversation or something.
Yeah, but that sounds a bit formal, maybe.
It does. And Sobremesa captures this specific cultural tradition, this habit of really prioritizing that time. It's about valuing the company, the bonding, right then and there.
Instead of just rushing off to the next thing.
Exactly. It's not about efficiency. It's about connection.
Right. And I think it often happens after lunch, too, doesn't it? Especially like a big Sunday lunch.
Oh, absolutely. Before people have to get back to their afternoon tasks or whatever, it's seen as this cherished social ritual, something you don't hurry.
A deliberate pause in the day, just for connecting with people.
Mm-hmm. Like, here's a simple example. We had a long sobremesa after Sunday lunch.
Tuvimos una larga sobremesa después del almuerzo del domingo. Yeah, you can almost feel that relaxation just hearing the sentence.
You really can. It paints a picture.
Okay, so moving from lingering after a meal, what about a specific mealtime that's a bit different in Spanish-speaking cultures? There's a word for that too, right? Merienda.
Yes, let's pronounce that one, merienda.
Merienda. Okay, so this is like a snack, but not just any old snack.
Exactly. It's a light meal, or maybe a substantial snack, that people have specifically in the late afternoon or early evening.
Sort of between lunch and dinner.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Because dinner is often eaten quite late, like 9 or 10 p.m. sometimes. Merienda fills that gap. It's a distinct, culturally recognized meal slot.
Ah, that makes total sense culturally. If the daily rhythm is different, you need a word for that specific hunger gap filler.
Yeah. It's much more specific than just saying snack in English, or even tea time, which has its own connotation.
It's like an ingrained habit reflecting that different daily schedule.
Lily.
And where is this common? Like Spain, Mexico, Argentina.
Yep, very common across Spain and Latin America.
Hmm.
In Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, for instance, it's often around 5 p.m., maybe with mate.
Okay.
And even in the Philippines, influenced by Spanish culture, they have merienda as a recognized light mealtime, sometimes morning or afternoon.
Wow. Okay. So, a simple example.
How about this? The kids have a merienda after school, before doing homework.
Los niños toman una merienda al salir de la escuela antes de hacer la tarea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that fits perfectly into that afternoon routine.
It really does.
Okay, so we've talked about times around food. What about an action? Something you do when you get something new. The word is estrenar.
Ooh, I like this one. Let's say it. Estrenar.
Estrenar. This is a fun one, I think. It means to use something or wear something for the very first time.
That's exactly it. It's a single verb that means to debut something new.
Like a new outfit or new shoes.
Yeah, or a new car even. Or it can be used for the first showing, like the premiere of a movie or a play.
Wow, okay. One single verb covers all of that. In English, we'd have to say wear for the first time, use for the first time, premiere.
Right, you need a whole phrase. That conciseness is part of why it's tricky to translate directly.
Definitely.
And there's often this real sense of excitement or maybe a little bit of celebration when you estrenar something.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, apparently the word itself comes from a Latin root that was related to like New Year's gifts or good omens.
No way. So it has this feeling of a positive, fresh start built into it.
Kind of, it adds this really cool layer of meaning, doesn't it? It's not just the action, but the feeling around the action.
That's amazing. Okay, simple example.
Yesterday, I wore my new shoes for the first time.
Ayer estrené unos zapatos nuevos. Yeah, it just captures that little thrill of stepping out in something brand new.
It really does.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about a specific time of day, or maybe more accurately, an action related to it. Madrugar.
Okay, say that slowly. Madrugar.
Madrugar. I feel like I understand this one, but how would you explain it clearly?
It means to wake up very early in the morning.
Like really early? Before sunrise, maybe?
Often, yes. Or just generally much earlier than you might naturally prefer to wake up.
Right. Again, English needs a phrase like wake up early or get up at the crack of dawn.
But Spanish has just this one single verb for that specific action of rising early.
And it often feels like you're doing it because you have to, right? Not just because you're an early bird.
Yeah, there's often that sense of necessity, maybe for work or catching an early flight or some other obligation.
Right.
And there's that famous saying, too, that connects it to being diligent. Al que madruga, Dios lo ayuda.
God helps those who get up early. The early bird catches the worm kind of idea.
Exactly. And related is the noun madrugada, which is that period of the very early morning itself, like dawn.
Got it. So an example could be, tomorrow I have to wake up really early to catch the 6 a.m. flight.
Perfect. Mañana tengo que madrugar para tomar el vuelo de las 6 a.m. It just perfectly describes needing that super early start.
Okay, let's shift from actions to describing a type of person. The word is friolento.
Try saying that one, friolento. And just a note, in Spain, you might also hear friolento.
Friolento, got it. So this describes someone who gets cold really easily, always feels the chill.
That's precisely it. You know, that person who always seems to need a sweater or a blanket, even when other people feel perfectly comfortable.
Yeah, I know a few people like that. So again, English needs a whole phrase, sensitive to cold, or maybe cold-natured.
But Spanish has this neat single adjective.
Friolento, or friolenta for a woman.
Right. And friolento tends to be more common in Latin America, while friolero or friolera is what you'd more likely hear in Spain. Just a regional difference.
And it feels like it's often used in a kind of lighthearted way, like just describing a friend's personal quirk.
Totally. It's not usually a serious complaint, more just an observation. Oh, you're so friolento.
Maybe it's more noticeable or talked about in places with generally warmer climates, where people aren't as accustomed to cold weather.
That actually makes a lot of sense. If feeling cold isn't your norm, you might be more sensitive to it when it happens.
Okay, the example sentence is, lend me a jacket, please. You know I'm really sensitive to cold.
Préstame una chaqueta, porfa. Ya sabes que soy bien friolenta. Using the feminine form, friolenta there. Perfect.
That's great. Okay, next up, a word about names. This one's fun. Tocayo.
Ah, yes. Let's say it together. Tucayo. And remember, if you're talking about a woman, it's tocaya.
Tocayo, tocaya. So this just means someone who has the same first name as you do, right? Your namesake?
Yes, that's the basic meaning. But while English has the word namesake, tokayo feels different in practice.
How so?
It's often used much more directly, more casually, and it feels really friendly.
Ah, okay. That's the key difference, isn't it? It creates this sort of instant camaraderie,
Exactly. You might meet someone, find out you share a name, and just say, Hola, tokayo.
like an instant friendly connection.
Absolutely. It immediately creates a little bond, and it's used in this very familiar, often kind of jovial way to acknowledge the coincidence.
That's really neat. Is there any story behind the word?
There's some thought, actually, that it might have origins in an indigenous language, possibly in Nahuatl, related to names or honor, which is a fascinating potential link to history.
Wow, that's really cool. And this word is used pretty widely across the Spanish-speaking world.
Oh yeah, it's very common and well understood.
Okay, the example really shows that friendly connection. Hey, namesake, I always remember you because we share a name.
Hola, tocayo. Siempre me acuerdo de ti porque compartimos nombre. You hear that warmth, right? It immediately establishes that friendly relationship.
Totally. Okay, now for a word that describes a state of being related to sleep or lack thereof, desvelado.
Let's try that one. Develado and desvelada for a woman. The verb is develarse.
Desvelado. So this is about not being able to sleep or being sleep deprived.
Yeah, but specifically, it often implies that something kept you awake, maybe involuntarily.
Like worry or just your mind racing.
Exactly. It's that state of sleeplessness when you wanted or tried to sleep, but couldn't. It's different from, say, trasnochar.
How is it different from trasnochar?
Well, trasnochar usually means you chose to stay up late. Maybe you're out with friends or studying or working late. It was a decision.
Ah, I see. But desvelado implies the lack of sleep wasn't necessarily your choice and you're feeling the effects.
Right. It captures that state of involuntary sleeplessness and the resulting tiredness. English just has, sleep deprived or I was kept awake.
Spanish has this single word that nails that specific feeling.
It really captures that state of being worn down because you just couldn't switch off and sleep.
Okay, the example is simple and clear. I am sleepless, thinking about the future.
Estoy desvelado pensando en el futuro. Or desvelada, depending on the speaker.
Makes sense. Okay, how about a word for a very specific sensation you get while eating? Empalagar.
Ooh, yes. Let's pronounce that. Empalagar. And the adjective form is empalagoso or empalagosa.
Empalagar. This verb, it means to get that feeling like almost sick or overwhelmed because something is just too sweet.
That's exactly the feeling. It's when something is so sugary, so intensely sweet, that you physically feel like, oh, I can't eat any more of this. It's too much.
Right, that cloying sweetness. So in English, we had to use a phrase like sickeningly sweet, or it's so sweet it makes me feel a bit sick, or I can't handle any more sweetness.
Yeah, exactly. But empalagar is just one single verb for that very specific sensory overload from sweetness.
It names that exact threshold where sweet stops being pleasant and becomes uncomfortable.
And the adjective empalagoso describes something that causes that feeling. Like a dessert could be empalagoso.
That'd be used metaphorically too?
Oh yeah, definitely. You might describe something as empalagoso if it's overly sentimental, like super cheesy or schmaltzy.
Huh. Okay, that makes sense too.
Yeah.
It totally makes sense that there's a word for the food feeling though, because it's such a common experience.
It really is. And the fact that the word exists just shows it's a recognized, discussable part of, eating and sensory experience in the culture.
Okay, the example captures it perfectly. That third donut already made me sick from the sweetness.
Esa tercera dona ya me empalago. The verb form there, showing the action of the donut causing that feeling in me.
Got it. Okay, finally, let's talk about a word that everyone thinks they know, but
Yeah.
it has a bit of a cultural twist sometimes. Mañana.
Ah, yes. Say it with me. Mañana. Now, remember, this word literally means morning.
And it also literally means tomorrow.
Correct. But in some cultural contexts, especially maybe when you ask someone when a task will get done.
Answering mañana doesn't always mean literally the next day, does it?
No, it doesn't always. This is less about a different definition and more about a possible cultural interpretation that sometimes exists.
Okay.
In certain situations, mañana can imply a less definite future time. Sort of like sometime later, maybe with a more relaxed attitude about strict deadlines than you might find elsewhere.
Right. This is sometimes used kind of jokingly, isn't it? As a stereotype almost, representing a laid-back attitude or maybe procrastination.
It definitely gets used that way, sometimes humorously. But it's really important to remember this is not a universal rule, and plenty of people mean tomorrow when they say mañana.
Of course, yeah. It's just that the possibility of that flexible interpretation exists and is kind of recognized.
Exactly. And the fact that this interpretation is known, even as a joke, it does sort of highlight potential cultural differences in how time or punctuality might be perceived or handled.
A bit like the word ahorita in Mexico, which technically means right now, but
Hmm.
often means in a little while or later.
That's a great comparison. It shows how words can get colored by cultural usage and context. Language is flexible with time.
So the classic example dialogue from our source is, when will you fix the washing machine? Tomorrow, sir. Tomorrow.
¿Cuándo arreglarán la lavadora? Mañana, señor, mañana. And yeah, said with a certain tone or a certain context you might understand, it means, yeah, yes, sometime soon when I get around to it.
Wow, that was such a fascinating journey through these words. It's really amazing how much culture can be packed into just a single word sometimes.
It really is, isn't it? Looking back at Sobremesa, merienda, estrenar, madruga, all of them,
Yeah.
you really see how Spanish doesn't just name objects. It names experiences, specific feelings, social moments.
Things that are clearly important, or at least commonly recognized, in the culture.
Exactly.
And learning these words feels like it's not just about, ticking off vocabulary on a list.
No, not at all.
It's genuinely about understanding a little bit more about the culture, about the people who speak Spanish. It really feels like it helps you connect on a deeper level.
It truly does. It's like opening a little window into a different way of seeing and experiencing the world.
So, thinking about how languages capture these specific experiences,
Yeah.
here's a little thought for you, our listener, to ponder.
Ooh, okay.
If your native language, whatever it is, had a single word for, let's say, the feeling you get when you finally sit down after a really long, tiring day,
Hmm.
what might that word be?
Oh, that's a good one. Or what other concepts or feelings in your life feel like they deserve their own unique word but maybe don't have one?
Yeah, definitely something fun to think about.
Yeah.
Well, we have had such a wonderful time exploring these untranslatable Spanish words with you today.
We really hope you enjoyed this deep dive into words like sobremesa, merienda, estrenar, madrugar, friolento, tocayo, desvelado, empalagar, and that interesting case of mañana.
We definitely encourage you to, listen out for these words when you encounter Spanish, and maybe, if you feel brave, try using them yourself.
Yeah. And don't forget, if you want to really challenge your listening comprehension, you can find the version of this deep dive that we did entirely in Spanish. It's already posted.
Thank you so, so much for joining us for this deep dive.
We really appreciate you listening. Hasta la próxima.